She gave me a place to stay, then locked the door from outside. The rain that night felt endless. I was standing beneath a flickering street lamp outside the downtown bus terminal, my jacket soaked through, phone dead, and no charger in sight. My ride had bailed last minute, and the benches inside were already packed with others waiting for delayed departures or pretending to sleep to avoid the chill. I was new to the city, had just arrived 2 days ago for a job that fell through faster than I could update my résumé. I wasn't looking for help. I just wanted a dry place to think. But then she appeared. She wore a light gray coat with a fur-lined hood and carried a tote bag that looked handmade. Her hair was clipped back loosely, and her voice was calm when she asked if I was okay. I must have looked worse than I thought, because she didn't wait for an answer. She just tilted her head slightly and said, "I live close by. If you need somewhere to stay, just for tonight, I have a couch. It's not much, but it's warm." I hesitated, of course. You don't follow strangers in a new city, especially not when things already feel stacked against you. But she looked safe. Her voice didn't push. Her smile didn't insist. It felt like the kind of offer you'd regret turning down more than accepting. I nodded. We walked 3 blocks through narrow alleys and dim, lit streets. The buildings shifted from neon-lit storefronts to older, quieter apartment blocks. Her place was on the 3rd floor of a brown, brick walk-up with ivy clinging to the outer walls. She unlocked the main door, then her apartment, which smelled faintly of lavender and something earthy, maybe tea or old paper. "Shoes off," she said gently. "You can dry your jacket on that hook." Inside, everything was immaculate. Not clean in the sense of tidy, clean in the way that made you feel you shouldn't touch anything. The walls were pale yellow, 1 bookshelf, 1 small sofa, and a round table set for one. There were no photos, no signs of mess, just the hum of an old refrigerator and a ticking clock on the wall. Bathrooms through there. "Towels are clean," she offered. "I'll make tea." I thanked her. My hands were shaking as I peeled off my wet layers and dried myself. The warm towel and tea helped. So did the silence. I told her about the job that didn't pan out, how I was trying to stay afloat, how I didn't want to call my parents. She nodded quietly through it all, listening more than speaking. That night, I fell asleep on her couch, wrapped in a woolen blanket with the soft clink of her washing dishes in the background. For the first time in days, I felt safe. But I woke up before dawn, unsure what stirred me. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. I sat up, heart beating fast, suddenly aware of how little I knew about where I was or who I was staying with. The front door looked solid. There was no sound of movement in the hall. I tried to shake the paranoia, telling myself I was tired, that she had helped me, that everything was fine. Still, I double-checked the lock, then laid back down. That night was the last time I'd feel truly calm for weeks. The morning light filtered weakly through sheer curtains, illuminating the room in a dusty, golden haze. I woke with a slight start, disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling above me and the muted sound of traffic outside. For a moment, I forgot where I was until the quiet hum of Clara's refrigerator reminded me. Her apartment, her offer. I stretched, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and sat up. The couch had left a faint line down one cheek. As I stood, I expected to see her in the kitchen, maybe making coffee or sipping tea like the night before. But the apartment was empty. Her coat was gone from the hook. The tea mug was still in the sink, half full. The air was still, too still. I checked the time on the microwave. It blinked 9:02 m.m. I called out softly, "Clara?" No response. A note, maybe. Nothing on the table or counters. That's when I noticed something strange. The apartment had no internal doors, at least none I could find. There was a bathroom door, yes, and a tiny coat closet near the entrance, but no bedroom, no other rooms branching off the main space. Just a wide-open layout and a single closed door opposite the kitchen, partially obscured by a bookshelf. I walked over, curiosity rising. I pushed the door, it didn't budge. No knob. Just a seam in the wall. I tapped on it. Solid. Then I noticed the windows. They were tall with white painted frames and wide sills. I approached one, eager to take in the view. I needed air, maybe a walk to clear my head. But when I tried to lift the window, it didn't move. I jiggled it. Tried another. All sealed shut, tight as though glued. A chill crept into my spine. Still, I told myself it was fine. Maybe she was cautious. Maybe the locks were old. I made tea with the same kettle from last night, tried to shake the unease. She'd be back soon, I told myself. She returned around 1 p.m., breezing in with a plastic grocery bag and a smile. "Morning," she said cheerfully as though she hadn't vanished for hours. "I got you some yogurt and fruit. Thought you might be hungry." I asked where she'd gone. She waved vaguely. "Just work. I freelance, errands mostly. I didn't want to wake you." I didn't press. That night, I offered to leave. I thanked her again profusely, told her I didn't want to overstay my welcome. She laughed softly, gently brushing my shoulder as she passed me a bowl of soup. "Stay until you figure things out. I like having someone around." The next day passed in a blur of her comings and goings. I tried the front door once out of curiosity. It was locked. I frowned. Puzzled, I turned the knob again. Nothing. No rattle. No give. Like the mechanism wasn't even there. That evening, I brought it up gently. "Oh," she said, sipping tea. "Yeah, it locks automatically. I'll unlock it for you in the morning if you want to go somewhere." But she never did. Each morning she left before I woke up. Each evening she returned with food and a smile, asking how I'd slept, what I'd read, if I wanted to watch a movie on her old DVD player. Her demeanor was always warm, never cold, never unkind. But the door never opened, and the windows stayed sealed. Over the next few days, the strangeness of the apartment deepened. No mail ever came. No neighbors ever knocked. There were no sounds from the hallway. The TV only played DVDs, no cable. The Wi-Fi worked barely and only connected to one device at a time. Her bookshelf had titles with no dust, as if placed recently, decoratively. And most unsettling of all, the hallway, when I finally dared to peek behind the curtain, was bare. No other doormats, no noise. Just a row of identical brown doors and stillness. One evening I asked if she had family. She smiled sadly. "Not anymore." Another night I asked about the strange door across the kitchen. "Just storage," she said. "Nothing important." I was beginning to feel less like a guest, and more like part of the furniture. The morning I realized I couldn't leave, truly couldn't leave, the sense of calm that Clara so carefully cultivated began to crumble. It started with another soft attempt, a gentle twist of the front door handle while Clara was out. I didn't expect it to swing open. I had tried before, always finding it locked, and always dismissing it as an automatic security feature. But this time, I pushed harder, gripping the handle and applying my shoulder to the door. Nothing, no creak, no shift. The handle didn't even feel connected to anything. Just a loose, metal loop, like a prop in a stage play. I stepped back and stared. The door wasn't locked. It was sealed. Panic fluttered in my chest. I examined the edges of the frame. The door sat flush with the wall, with no visible hinges on my side. No gap to slide even a credit card through. I crouched and ran my fingers along the bottom, smooth, unbroken wood. It wasn't just locked from the outside. It had no functional opening from the inside at all. My throat tightened. I backed away slowly, suddenly aware of how quiet the apartment was. It was early afternoon, maybe. The light from the single window was dim and cold. I picked up my dead phone from the counter and plugged it in. Still nothing. The outlet beside the couch hadn't worked since I got there. Clara said it was temperamental. She'd offered to charge my phone herself, but I hadn't seen it since. The realization hit slowly, like warm water turning scalding. I hadn't left this apartment in 3 days. I hadn't seen another person. I hadn't spoken to anyone outside of her. I was inside a stranger's apartment, alone, without a phone, with sealed windows and a door that only opened from the other side. I was trapped. The nausea came quickly. I grabbed the bathroom sink and stared at myself in the mirror. Pale eyes sunken. My breathing was shallow, erratic. Was I being paranoid? Was I overreacting? Maybe she really just liked privacy. Maybe she thought she was helping. But something told me otherwise. That evening, I waited by the door. When she returned, her face lit up as usual. She held up a bag of takeout, smiled like we were an old couple sharing rituals. "Hungry?" she asked. "Clara," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "The door doesn't open." She paused, just for a second. Then she placed the bag on the table and began unpacking it. "It's old," she said. "Gets stuck sometimes. I meant to have it looked at." "You've been locking it from the outside," I said, more directly. She looked up at me then, her eyes softer than I expected. "You looked so tired when I met you," she said quietly. "You needed a place to rest." That's all I was offering. I didn't know how to respond. My hands trembled. She placed a bowl in front of me, sat down opposite. "Let's eat before it gets cold," she said. "We can talk after." But we didn't talk after. Every question I raised about the door, about my phone, about the locked room, she dodged with warmth and silence. She never raised her voice, never threatened, never even frowned. But every day I stayed, I felt a little more erased. That night, I pretended to sleep on the couch and listened. At midnight, she moved quietly through the apartment. I heard the soft clink of dishes, the muffled closing of drawers. Then, finally, the faint scrape of something metal near the front door. I cracked one eye open and saw her standing in the dim hallway, sliding something through a latch on the outside of the door. A bolt. She turned, her eyes passing over me. I shut my eyes fast, heart pounding. She stood silently for a moment. Then, softly, she whispered into the dark, "You'll understand soon." I stayed frozen long after her footsteps faded into her hidden room. After that night, everything I did had a different purpose, no longer just surviving, but finding a way out. Each morning Clara left without waking me, and each night she returned like nothing had changed. She'd bring groceries, ask how I'd slept, suggest watching another DVD. Her warmth never wavered. If anything, she seemed more at ease, like she believed I'd settled in, that I was staying for good. But I couldn't pretend anymore. I began observing her more closely. Her routines weren't just habits, they were rituals. She always left at exactly 8:15 a.m., returning between 12:45 and 100 p.m., usually carrying the same canvas bag. She placed it in the same cupboard above the fridge. Every time, like clockwork, she never let me near it. One day, while she was gone, I tried to reach it myself. I dragged the table quietly across the floor, careful not to leave marks. Standing on my toes, I opened the cupboard, empty, just dust and a single loose screw in the corner. A decoy. I checked the trash under the sink, nothing identifiable, no receipts, no packaging, no clues. It was like she had scrubbed every trace of her life before me. Another time, I waited by the front door after she left. I pressed my ear against the frame, listening for footsteps. They faded away after a moment, replaced by silence. I pounded on the door once, twice, then again louder. No answer, no neighbors yelling, no movement in the hall. Either she lived at the edge of the building or the other apartments were empty. One morning I asked her directly, "Do other people live here?" She hesitated. "I keep to myself," she said. "People come and go. It's better not to get involved." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I started testing her in small ways. I asked to go with her on her errands. "Just for air," I said, forcing a chuckle. "I'm going stir crazy," she laughed. "It's not safe out there," she said, brushing a crumb from the table. "The streets are full of people who don't care if you live or die." Another time, I asked for a key. She pretended not to hear. Eventually, I began counting the exact number of steps she took after leaving the apartment each morning. I'd wait in silence, track her walk down the hall, the stairs, out the door. 117, always the same. And then I'd listen for silence. During those windows of absence, I explored everything. I checked the seams of the walls, tapped the tiles in the bathroom, lifted the couch cushions, nothing. Until I noticed the bookshelf. It was narrow, filled with mass-market paperbacks that looked untouched. But one of the shelves, when pressed, shifted ever so slightly. I froze. Pressed again, a click. The entire shelf tilted forward, revealing a door behind it. But it wouldn't open, not fully. It had a heavy padlock drilled into the frame, thick and old. The kind of lock you didn't pick without tools or time. Still, I'd found something. That night, Clara returned later than usual. She looked tired. Her movements were slower. She forgot to warm up the soup, served it cold, and didn't notice. "Rough day?" I asked. She blinked at me. "Some days just feel longer," she said. And for the first time, she looked like someone carrying weight, not just secrets. I almost asked her why she locked the door, why she kept me here. But I didn't. Instead, I asked about her past. She stirred her soup and said, "There were people once. I don't talk to them now. Some left, some didn't get the chance." I didn't know what that meant. I wasn't sure I wanted to know. I just nodded and said, "I'm sorry." She reached across the table and touched my hand. "You don't have to be. You're safe now. That's all that matters." And then she went to bed behind her locked door, leaving me alone with the echo of those words. Safe. It felt less like comfort, more like control. I couldn't stop thinking about the hidden door behind the bookshelf. It was the one mystery that didn't fit Clara's well-rehearsed calm. Every other question I asked, she met with a soft voice, a carefully constructed excuse. But that door, she never acknowledged it, never approached it, never looked in its direction. It was as if that part of the apartment didn't exist. The lock was old, a rusted iron loop set into the wood with heavy screws. I ran my fingers around it, gently tugging, looking for weak points. But the door had no handle, no gaps, no hinges visible from my side. It was a vault. I started checking the bookshelf every time she left, pushing it open, staring at the padlock like it might dissolve if I stared hard enough. The longer I stayed, the more I knew that whatever was behind that door would explain everything. On the 5th day after I found it, I noticed something new. A draft. Faint and cold, slipping through the narrow seam between the door and the frame. I crouched low, pressing my cheek to the floor. There was light, just a sliver, pale and unmoving, not electric, natural. It flickered like candlelight. My heart thudded. The next morning, after Clara left, I focused on the bookshelf itself. I ran my hands along the back edges of the books, tugging them one by one. Most were glued in place, all but one journey to the center of the earth. It slid out easily, behind it a small metal key. Not the key to the padlock, too small, but possibly a clue. I tried it on every drawer, every cupboard. Nothing fit. Until I remembered the drawer under the bathroom sink. It had always been stuck, painted over, warped with age. But with the key in hand, I pried it open carefully. It wasn't locked, just jammed. Inside was a folded piece of cloth, and beneath the IDs, 4 of them. All different names, all different faces, but all of them unmistakably Clara. Different hairstyles, different eye colors, colored contacts maybe, but the bone structure, the faint freckle on the left cheek, those didn't lie. One ID said, Clarabelle. Another said, Juliana Knox. The others, Mara Ellis and Lena Durant. Each one was old, some expired over a decade ago. I laid them out on the bathroom floor, heart pounding. This wasn't just someone with a murky past. This was someone who changed identities regularly. I returned the IDs to the drawer, wrapping them in the cloth again. I didn't know why I bothered. Maybe I didn't want her to know I knew. That night, I watched Clara more closely. She was tired again. Her smile cracked at the edges. She winced when she sat down as if her body was sore. Her hand trembled slightly when she poured tea. "You okay?" I asked. She looked at me and said, "You ever feel like no one sees you? Like you're just invisible?" I nodded. She smiled. "I knew you'd understand." I asked, cautiously, "Who were you before this?" She looked down into her cup. "Someone people forgot." And then she stood up and went into her private room, locking it behind her. Later that night, I returned to the bookshelf and pushed it open again. This time I noticed something wedged into the corner, hidden just behind the lower shelf. A scrap of torn envelope. On it, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Don't forget who you are?" No signature, no address. I stared at the lock one more time. I didn't have the tools to open it, but I knew what I had to do. I had to find another way in. It began one night after another failed attempt to force the lock open. I had waited until Clara went to bed, well past midnight, and tried prying at the edges with a spoon I'd bent into a makeshift lever. But the wood held firm, and the metal only scraped, leaving no give, no crack of progress. Defeated, I slumped against the bookshelf and closed my eyes. Then I heard it, a whisper, faint almost imagined, a hiss through the wall, like wind, but it carried words. "You're not the first." I froze. I pressed my ear to the side of the bookshelf, my breath shallow. "She doesn't like letting go," came the voice again, dry, soft and low, like someone hadn't spoken aloud in weeks. "Don't pretend you're safe. She only seems kind before she forgets you're real." "Who are you?" I whispered back, terrified. Silence for a moment. Then, "No one. Same as you if you wait too long." I stared at the wall, trying to place the sound. It wasn't coming from behind the door, it was to the side, just beyond the bookcase, as if someone was pressed up against the adjacent wall, whispering through a vent or pipe. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Why don't you leave?" A pause. "Because the first time I thought she needed help. And the second time I hoped I could fix her." The voice faded like a wave receding into the sand. I waited, called out again. Nothing. The next morning, Clara was unusually cheerful. She made pancakes. Real ones, not from a box. She danced a little while humming, wiping her hands on her apron. "You sleep okay?" she asked. I nodded, afraid she could see the exhaustion in my eyes. She poured 2 cups of tea and joined me on the couch. "You know," she said, "you're the first person who hasn't tried to run the first night." I stared at her, my mouth dry. "Why would they?" She gave me a look. A very subtle one, like she was amused. "Some people don't appreciate being helped," she said quietly. Then her expression softened. "You're different though." Later that day, when she was gone, I examined the wall near the bookshelf. It looked ordinary, pale yellow paint, a bit scuffed near the baseboard. But I pressed along the corner, knocking gently, searching for sound. Then I heard it again. Faint tapping. I whispered, "Can you hear me?" Silence. Then, "She's listening even when she's gone?" I blinked, shivering. "Is there a way out?" I asked. Long pause. "If you find the others." The voice said, "You'll understand." "What others?" I whispered. The voice answered simply, "She keeps souvenirs." I wanted to ask more, but the voice didn't return. That night, Clara returned earlier than usual. Her mood had shifted, she looked agitated. Her eyes flicked to the corners of the apartment like she was looking for something or someone. "Did you hear anything today?" she asked suddenly. My heart thumped. "Like what?" "Noise. From the walls, pipes or anything." I shook my head quickly. "No." She studied me for a long time. Then she smiled, soft and eerie. "Good. Sometimes the walls creak. This place is old." I nodded slowly, pretending to yawn, pretending I was tired. But I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I whispered again and again to the wall, waiting for the voice to return. It didn't. But its warning stayed with me. "Don't pretend you're safe." It was a Tuesday when I made my first real attempt to escape. The windows had mocked me for days, tall, clean, and impossible to open. Clara always said they were painted shut years ago by the landlord. "Keeps the cold out," she'd say with a gentle smile as if that were an answer. But now I saw them differently. I waited until she left. As usual, I counted her footsteps. 117. I knew I had maybe 4 hours. I selected the bathroom window because it was the smallest and most private. Clara rarely checked it, and the walls around it were tile, not wood, less likely to echo the noise. I filled the sink with warm water to cover my sound, just in case. I grabbed the butter knife I'd been hiding in the lining of the couch and a fork from the drawer, twisted into a flat, prying tool. I wedged the knife under the bottom of the window frame, pressing, wiggling, levering. Tiny flakes of old paint cracked and fell. Then I saw it metal, just below the inner seal. Welded bars, thick, vertical steel rods fused into the outer frame, not nailed, not screwed, welded. Permanent. I stopped breath-fogging the glass. I touched the cold metal with my fingertips. This wasn't normal. This wasn't precaution. This was prison. I backed away slowly, sat on the closed toilet lid. My knees shook. Who installs bars on a third-story bathroom window? I checked the kitchen window next. Same story. Behind the blinds, bars, thick black, nearly invisible in shadow, like a cage designed to be overlooked. She never intended for me to leave. Not ever. Later that night, when she returned, I tried to act normal. I sat on the couch, legs tucked under me, flipping through a book I wasn't reading. She noticed the window, noticed that a bit of chipped paint had drifted onto the floor. She walked over, looked down at the flakes, then up at me. Her voice was so soft I barely heard it. Were you cold today? I froze. No, I said quickly. I just wanted air. She smiled, but her eyes didn't follow. Some people think they need air, she said, brushing the paint away with her sleeve. But they really need stillness. You're still adjusting? Wasn't trying to leave. I added, too fast. Her smile lingered. I know, she said. You're still here, aren't you? She made soup that night. It was too salty. Her hands trembled a little as she stirred. Before she went to bed, she came over to where I sat on the couch. She leaned down slowly and kissed the top of my head. I see you, she whispered. Even when you don't see yourself. I didn't respond. After she locked her door, I cried silently into the blanket she'd given me. I wasn't just trapped. I was being watched, groomed, pacified, and I was starting to believe she thought this was love. It was a rare quiet night, one of those strange hours when something in the air feels off, thicker, heavier, like the apartment itself was holding its breath. Clara had been quieter all day. She didn't hum while cooking, she barely touched her tea. She didn't ask me any of her usual questions, what I dreamed about, what I read, what I missed from my old life. We ate dinner in near silence. The only sound was the clink of spoons against ceramic. Afterward, she sat across from me at the small round table and just stared, like she was trying to memorize my face. I was used to her calm, her control. But tonight, her silence felt brittle, like something held together too tightly and one word might shatter it. You okay? I asked. She smiled. But it didn't last. Do you believe people always leave? She said softly. I hesitated. I think sometimes people leave because they need to. She looked down into her lap. Her hands were folded tightly. Her thumb kept rubbing one knuckle in small, frantic circles. I never wanted to hurt anyone, she said. I just wanted them to stay long enough to understand. She was unraveling and I didn't know what to say. Understand what? I asked. That I could take care of them, she whispered. That I could be enough? Her voice cracked. My mother left when I was 9, she continued. My father after that. Foster homes, strangers, everyone walked away. I decided I wouldn't let anyone else leave unless they wanted to. I was frozen in my seat. Every instinct in me screamed to run, to scream, to shatter the window and jump through the bars. But she wasn't threatening me, she was confessing. I watch people, she said. On benches. In coffee shops. I wait until I see someone who's tired. You can always tell. They don't walk fast. They stare at their hands. They forget to lock their phones. I swallowed hard. You were crying in the rain, she said. No one saw you but me. I remembered that night, the way she approached, so calm, so gentle. I told myself this time would be different. She whispered, that you'd stay because you wanted to. That I wouldn't have to. She stopped. Have to what? I asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she got up slowly and walked to the couch, sat down, pulled the blanket over her legs like a child hiding from a storm. I don't want to be alone anymore, she said, barely audible. Her back was to me now, her body trembling slightly. I stood in the kitchen unmoving. Something about her words, her honesty, twisted as it was, left a pit in my chest. She didn't want to hurt me, but she already had. The next morning, I woke to find my breakfast already set on the table. She wasn't in sight. The front door remained locked. And on the counter, beside a steaming cup of tea, was my phone, dead still, screen cracked. But it was the first time I'd seen it in over a week. A note lay beneath it. Sometimes the only way to keep something is to give it back. No signature. Just Clara's looping script. I plugged the phone in, hoping, desperate for even one bar of life. But as it charged, I stared at the door again, still sealed. Whatever she meant by that note, it wasn't freedom. Not yet. The note, the returned phone, the tremble in Clara's voice, everything was shifting. She wasn't the same woman who smiled at me under that bus terminal light. Or maybe she was, and I just hadn't known what loneliness looked like when it wore a soft face. I kept my routine that day, trying to seem unfazed. I drank the tea, nibbled at the toast, read from one of her books while the phone slowly charged behind the couch cushion where I had hidden it. The charger barely worked, it flickered constantly, the cord bent near the plug, but I got it to 4%, just enough to try something. No signal, no Wi-Fi. She must have disabled the router. Still, I opened my notes app and typed everything I could remember. Clara's face, Her aliases, the layout of the apartment, the fake bookshelf, the bars on the window. I didn't know when I'd have the chance to send it. But I had to try. And then it happened. Late in the afternoon, as I sat cross-legged on the couch trying not to cry, a scrap of paper slid under the front door. A simple piece torn from a lined notebook. On it hastily scribbled in pencil, "If you want out, act sick, very sick, she'll call for help. But you have to collapse. Fast. No name, no greeting, just that." My heart jumped into my throat. I ran to the door, dropped to my knees and whispered, "Who are you? Are you still there?" But there was only silence. I pressed my palm against the door, the paper gripped tight in my fist. Had the whispering neighbor sent this? The voice behind the wall? Or had someone else tried this route before? Clara returned an hour later, her mood unreadable. She didn't speak much, just set down her bag and went straight to the sink, washing her hands longer than usual. I watched her movements carefully. She looked tired. Even more than before, her eyes were red. Not from tears exactly, but something close. That night, I practiced. I let myself go limp on the bed. Timed how long I could hold my breath. Made sure I could fall without hurting myself. In the mirror, I imagined the look on her face when she found me collapsed. Would she panic? Call for help? Or would she lock me behind that secret door? The fear gripped me so tightly I couldn't sleep. But the next morning I knew I had to do it. I waited until she handed me my tea. I sipped, let my body wobble, then dropped the cup. It shattered on the floor. Clara gasped. I gripped the edge of the table, exhaled sharply, then let my knees buckle. I fell hard, letting my body hit the ground with a convincing thud. I kept my eyes unfocused. Let my breath shallow. She was over me in an instant. Hey, look at me. I didn't move. Her fingers pressed to my neck, checking for a pulse. Her breath quickened. I could feel the air shift around her. Then she moved away. I heard her rifling through drawers, then the sound of a phone. Yes, I think she passed out. Yes, her breathing strange. Please come. My heart pounded. This was it. I stayed still as she paced, muttering to herself. 20 minutes later, sirens. I kept my eyes shut as footsteps pounded up the stairs, then her voice again, but higher now, panicked, defensive. I didn't do anything, she just collapsed. Please help her. The paramedics entered. Rough hands lifted me gently. Someone was shining a light into my eyes. She's coming around, a voice said. I let myself stir, coughing weakly. Where am I? I mumbled. In good hands now, said another voice. We're taking you to the hospital? I didn't dare look at Clara. But as they loaded me onto the stretcher, I felt her hand grip mine. Not tight, not desperate, just trembling. She leaned down and in a whisper only I could hear, she said, You'll come back. They all come back? The ambulance rocked gently as it sped through the narrow city streets, its sirens slicing through the night air. I lay on the stretcher, still playing my part, heart pounding harder with every passing second. But it wasn't over. Clara had come with me. She sat beside the stretcher, her hand gripping mine with surprising strength. Her eyes darted between the paramedics, watching everything me, them, the road. There was a desperate tension in her face, as if she wasn't sure whether to cry or scream. She has no known medical history. She told one of the paramedics when asked. She just moved to the city. Very stressed. I've been helping her. I didn't speak. I kept my eyes low, breath ragged, doing my best to look pale and unfocused. One of the paramedics kept a wary eye on her, scribbling notes on a clipboard. How long has she been staying with you? He asked. Clara, a few days, she said. She needed somewhere to go. I offered. Do you have family in the area? The other paramedic asked me. I blinked slowly and whispered, No. The ride felt eternal. Clara kept smoothing my hair back like a nurse, like a mother. Her thumb traced the edge of my cheek, soft and mechanical. You're gonna be fine, she said. I didn't respond. We arrived at the hospital, fluorescent lights, white walls, the smell of antiseptic. I was wheeled into an exam room. Clara tried to follow. She can stay, right? She asked the nurse. I'm sorry. The nurse replied politely. Only medical staff right now? Clara's face tightened. I'm her caregiver. We'll call you when we've stabilized her. They closed the curtain between us before she could argue further. I finally exhaled. Alone, safe, at least for the moment. A nurse came in, young, serious, professional. Are you in danger? She asked quietly. I nodded. Do you want her near you? I shook my head. That was enough. Within minutes, 2 security guards were posted outside the curtain. Clara's voice rose on the other side, calm, then confused, then pleading. She needs me, she said. She asked for privacy, came the reply. They led her away. I heard her shoes squeak down the corridor, and then silence. The police came shortly after, 2 officers, 1 male, 1 female. They asked gentle questions at first. I told them everything, not all at once, but enough: how I met Clara, how she offered shelter, how the door locked from outside, the hidden room, the fake IDs, the bars on the window, the whispering neighbor, the paper slipped under the door. They listened carefully, took notes. Asked for timelines. One officer asked if I wanted to press charges. I hesitated. I just want to go home, I said. They nodded. We'll need a statement. And you'll need to stay overnight for observation. Later that night, I overheard one of the nurses whispering to a colleague. She was completely lucid. The nurse said. Tried to explain she was protecting her. Said she saved her. The other nurse asked. Has she done this before? I don't know. The first replied. But it sounds like this isn't the first time someone's come in like this. I lay awake most of the night in the hospital bed. Free, but afraid. Because Clara wasn't a monster. She was something worse. Someone who believed what she was doing was love. The next morning I sat up in the hospital bed, pale sunlight spilling across the white sheets. Everything looked sterile and safe, but I couldn't shake the unease. I still half expected Clara to slip through the door, whispering apologies, begging me to come home like nothing had happened. But she didn't. Instead, the police returned. Detective Monroe was calm and patient. She sat across from me with a yellow notepad, offering water I didn't drink and reassurances I barely heard. We've located the apartment, she said. Our officers are on site now. We'll gather evidence. There's more going on than what you've told us. I stared down at the blanket, fists clenched. Is she in custody? The detective nodded. Brought her in last night after the hospital requested a wellness check. She didn't resist. Told the officers she'd been helping you, that you were better off inside. She believes that, I said softly. I know, Monroe replied. That's what makes it complicated. She asked me more questions about the secret room, the IDs, the window bars. I told her everything again, slowly this time, watching her pen move across the page. Do you know who the neighbor is? The one behind the wall. Monroe paused. There isn't anyone registered in the unit next to hers. My skin prickled. No signs of anyone living there, I asked. She shook her head empty. No furniture, no utilities. But it's been rented before. We'll look into it. I wondered then if the whisper had been real or if it was just my desperation taking shape in the silence. But the note, the warning, that had been real. Someone had been there. Later that day, the hospital discharged me. A counselor stopped by, offered resources, emergency housing, therapy, trauma support. I nodded numbly. Outside the hospital, the world felt too open, the wind too loud, every sound too sharp. The police offered to drive me to a safe hotel. I accepted. But as we pulled away from the hospital, I caught a glimpse of Clara being escorted out a side door by 2 officers. Her wrists were cuffed loosely in front of her. She wore the same gray coat, her face pale but calm. When she saw me through the car window, she didn't cry, didn't shout, she just smiled. A small, tired smile, like someone who had tried and failed to build a home out of dust. She asked about you, the officer said quietly. Said she just wanted to make sure you were eating. I looked her way. There was no trial, not in the traditional sense. Clara was evaluated, deemed mentally unfit to stand regular prosecution. The psychologist labeled her with several disorders, none of which surprised me. She was committed to a long-term psychiatric facility pending further review. She didn't fight it, didn't argue or demand a lawyer. She just told them, I thought I was helping. They found dozens of journals in her apartment, notes on people she'd followed, a record of strangers she'd spoken to, helped, watched. In some cases, she had even taken them in briefly. None had stayed more than a few days. I was the longest. They also found the IDs. Some were hers. Others they couldn't confirm. The door behind the bookshelf led to a room with a single twin bed, faded posters on the wall, a desk covered in dust. A closet full of coats and shoes, none of which were mine. There were no photos, no names, just pieces of people who had left or disappeared, and now I was free. But freedom didn't feel like it used to. The first few weeks after Clara's arrest blurred together in a haze of police debriefings, hospital visits, and cautious phone calls with my family. I moved into temporary housing arranged by a local outreach program, just a small room with a cot and a window that opened. I opened that window every morning, even when it rained. I needed to know I could. But the relief didn't come all at once. Freedom after confinement feels surreal, like you're walking a dream where nothing is quite solid. I'd sit for hours in the corner of that tiny room, watching shadows move across the walls, flinching at every creak in the hallway. I slept with a chair propped under the doorknob. I checked windows twice before going to bed. I couldn't stand the scent of lavender, the way it clung to towels, pillows, Clara's tea. The outreach center used lavender hand soap, and the first time I smelled it, I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I was safe. But I didn't feel safe. Some nights I almost missed the stillness, Clara's quiet voice, the safety she believed she offered. As twisted as it was, I'd felt seen in her apartment. Caged, but seen. That's what haunted me. Clara didn't fit the mold of a predator. She never yelled, never struck, she never even threatened. Her harm was quiet, gentle, wrapping around me like warmth, disguising control as comfort. A few months after her institutionalization, I received a letter. Unmarked envelope, no return address. Postmark from a city hours away. Inside was a folded piece of paper, no signature, just 6 words in careful cursive. You'll understand someday. I still hope. I stared at it for a long time. Had she written it from the facility? Had someone helped her send it? I didn't report it. I tore it up, flushed the pieces down the sink, and sat on the floor for hours, hugging my knees to my chest. Even now, part of me wanted to believe she meant well. And that's what scared me the most. I started therapy. I needed to. The counselor was kind, patient. We talked about isolation, about trauma bonding, about the guilt that follows manipulation. I confessed that I sometimes felt sorry for Clara, that I sometimes wondered if I could have helped her, if I had said the right thing. The therapist gently reminded me she locked you in. She lied. She built a world where you couldn't leave. Still, the memory of her voice stayed with me. A year passed. Seasons changed, I moved cities. Got a job at a bookstore. Kept my world small and quiet. I made friends slowly. I told no one the full story. But I kept the bathroom window cracked open, even in winter. And I always checked the locks. Twice. Time softens everything, they say. The sharp corners of fear, the overwhelming pressure of memory, over time, they dull. But they don't disappear. They don't drift away like smoke. They settle deep, quiet, waiting for the right sound or scent to stir them back to life. It's been almost 2 years now. I live in a new apartment, my own. Not big, not flashy, but mine. It has sunlight in the mornings, and plants that I remember to water, and a door that locks from the inside. Some nights I still wake up unsure where I am. For a split second, I expect to see that pale yellow wallpaper, hear the soft ticking of Clara's clock. My body tenses, ready to stay still, ready to play the part again. But then I remember the breeze from the cracked window. The noise of the street below. My apartment, I'm free. Still, recovery has been uneven. The trauma didn't vanish when Clara was taken away. It didn't lift when I moved cities or started a new job, it stayed. But now, it's quieter, more manageable. I've spoken to others who've survived something like this. Isolation, coercive control, captivity disguised as care. It's rarer than it should be, but more common than anyone wants to believe. Especially when the captor doesn't look the part. Clara wasn't a monster in a dark alley. She was a stranger offering tea in the rain. People ask if I ever saw her again. The answer is no, but I still wonder what happened to her. Sometimes I imagine she's still in that facility, pacing the hallways, talking to herself in that soft, soothing voice. Maybe she's helping someone fold laundry or planting something in a garden bed out back. Maybe she tells the staff stories about a girl who came to stay, who needed her, who understood. Other times I wonder if she's out, if the system lost track, if she slipped through. If one day, she'll sit on a bench again, watching tired faces in the rain. That's the part I can't let go of. Because I remember how tired I was that night, and I know how good it felt to be seen. These stories show the consequences and limits of trusting strangers. I met Clara on a night when I was most vulnerable, cold, stranded, unsure where to go. She seemed kind, gentle, safe. But what began as a gesture of shelter became a slow erosion of my freedom. Through sealed windows, locked doors, and soft-spoken control, Clara built a world where leaving meant betrayal. Her harm wasn't loud, it was quiet. Calm. The kind of danger you almost welcome, until you realize it's swallowed your life whole. I escaped, but the road back to normal was long. And while I found freedom, the scars stayed with me. To anyone listening, be cautious with kindness from strangers. Be watchful of care that cages. And if you've ever experienced something like this, know that your recovery doesn't have to be fast or perfect. It just has to be yours. Have you ever trusted a stranger who changed your life? Share your story in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true story narrations.